Just because the economy is tanking doesn't mean your defensive needs are going to go away. Whether you're a civilian sheepdog, maybe a police officer in a small department where you have to buy your own weaponry for duty use, you're still going to have to do it. And you may not have the money to buy a very high quality AR-15. And an AR-15 can easily run well above $1,000. And if you get some varieties will go above $2,000. And so for a tactical carbine, i.e. defensive rifle, and I'll just call them tactical carbines, guys want one, but they just don't have the money. Therefore, I'm going to make this series on what I feel is a very high quality and very viable alternative to more expensive guns. This is my multi-part review by Nutnfancy, of course, on the venerable Mini-14. Welcome. Yeah, it's going to take multi-parts to cover it. There's a lot of information to go over. I've had requests for this, and it's going to be a foundation video that I'll refer a lot of my emailers to. In other words, the Mini-14 has and probably will continue to be, as long as political conditions allow us to have these guns, it's going to be a staple in a lot of people's arsenals for defensive use. A lot to go over, by the way. These are going to be my talking points for the tactical carbines. I really do not have a standard tactical carbine as of yet. In other words, one model, one make that I'm going to refer all others to, kind of like I do in the Glock series for pistols. That may change in the future, but for this series of videos on the Mini-14, I'm going to talk a lot just about the Mini. I may compare and contrast it against other offerings like the kel-tec SU-16 series, maybe some AR-15s as well. But I really don't have a standard yet. All these things, blah, 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 we'll go over. Yeah, I'll probably miss some stuff. May annotate it later if I can find the time. Hey, we're looking at Ruger's catalog. They always do a great job on here. By the way, this year they're offering the NRA version of the Mini-14. Very short barrel. It has a 16 1/8 inch barrel. Good luck trying to find that gun. And it's also not a high value gun. It's very expensive, right up around $1,000. And if you ask me, I'd prefer to have the full size barrel anyhow. I don't want to lose 2 inches off the barrel. That's just me though. Some guys will say, well, that shorter barrel is going to be more accurate. You know, it's stiffer. I don't buy that. It is cool though, and NRA's doing it, and they also give some money to the NRA. So very cool gun. If you can find that special version, that would be cool. The version we're going to look at though is going to be this one right here, and it's going to be the Ruger Ranch rifle. And the one I have in front of me, I'll show you here in a sec, is a 6.8 Remington SPC chamber. However, the most popular, of course, is going to be the 223 or 5.56 millimeter round. By far the most prevalent Mini-14 you'll see out there. So it also comes in 7.62 by 39, which is, of course, the AK round. It comes in some other variations as well. It has a wood stock. I do not prefer that one. I like synthetic stocks for a tough defensive weapon. And there's a Mini-30, like I just mentioned. I'll go over these improvements as the review goes on, and also the specifications as the review goes on. But that's what we're going to look at. By the way, I will unclip from the tripod occasionally, because these guns are long guns. They're very hard for me to back out and show you on the tripod. Not hard, it's freaking impossible. Now, I'm going to try to keep the camera as stable as I can, but dudes, you just got to bear with me. By the way, thanks to Impact Guns very much for hosting this review. That's why there's kind of an echo. I'm in one of their back rooms here for the instructional rooms. However, that's just something we're going to have to put up with. Thanks for understanding. What you're looking at here by way of introduction is a early 1990s Mini-14. This one right there, that black one, versus the newer Mini-14. And one of the reasons it took me a while to make this review is because I had to first secure the guns, of course, and that takes me a little while sometimes, especially to find the ones I want. And also I have to mentally organize how I'm going to do the review, because I wanted to bring an old Mini-14 in to show you the differences, since you are a prospective buyer. You might come across a Mini-14 in the secondary markets that's an older one, and I'm going to share with you my opinions, and that's all it is, a Nutnfancy data point of what I think's better and what the advantages are. So let's get going. Lots to talk about. We're going to start with the talking point, philosophy of use. What does philosophy of use mean for the Mini-14? Well, primarily it is a defensive gun. Maybe offensive gun if you're a police officer or a sheepdog engaged accordingly. This is a gun that you would defend your family and maybe your loved ones, family, friends, good neighbors against wolves or bad guys. Plain and simple, that's where I'm going to come with at you on these guns. These are defensive guns. Now, that's not to say that a lot of guys don't own Mini-14s just for recreation. That is totally a valid reason to own a Mini. No doubt. They are a fun gun to shoot. And so secondarily, they can be just a recreational firearm. And there's nothing wrong with that. I dig it. However, I think it's an expensive recreational firearm, especially with the cost of ammo going up and up and up, like every month it seems like. But POU is a defensive carbine, plain and simple. This is something that you would take out bad guys should your life be threatened. And I think probably by wide margins, most of the people buying minis have this in mind when they buy, when they buy one. So POU, there you have it. Let's talk about the weight on these guns. And it's going to be pretty simple to knock out. I just weighed both of them on the scale over there, and it's real simple. They both weigh 6 pounds, 12 ounces. Both of them. And it's amazing that they weigh the same thing, the same weight, is because this older Mini-14 in the foreground has a thinner barrel profile. Now, also I got to tell you, and I'll get to this when I talk about accessories, this is not a stock Mini right here. This has been outfitted with a chote thick stock, which I think is outstanding. But it compares favorably against the Ruger synthetic stock of this Mini 6.8 right here. Very similar. But the weights are identical. And that's because the newer, and I find it surprising because the newer Mini-14, as I'll talk about here in a sec, has a thicker barrel. Now, let's talk about how that weight compares against an AR-15. Okay, generally it's lighter. An AR-15, if it has an M4 profile barrel, maybe a heavier barrel, is not going to be super light. It's going to be around 7 3/4 pounds, generally speaking. Now, if you go crazy and start outfitting like a free-floated front fore end on it, a bunch of accessories, your AR-15 is going to easily weigh over 10 pounds. Okay, so just be advised. If you take them in their most basic forms, the Mini-14 is lighter. Okay, but hold on, it gets a little more complicated than that. The Mini-14 is a little deceptive in its weight, and here's why I'm going to say this. It comes with rings, and the rings that Mini-14s use are proprietary. By the way, I hate that. I wish Mini-14s would just have a standard Picatinny rail on them. Hello, Ruger, are you listening? And just put that on there, guys, instead of this ridiculous proprietary system that Ruger insists on forcing down our throats. I'll talk about what the limitations are of that in a second. However, if you decide to run optics on a Mini, it goes right to the weight issue. You're going to add at least 4 more ounces with those rings. They're heavy. They're made of steel, not aluminum. And they're very stout. They're very strong. However, you're going to lose some weight. And then you get your scope on there, you're going to be weighing around, depending on what your optics are, probably around 7.5, maybe even 8 pounds. If you want to keep your Mini lightweight, shoot irons. Don't put optics on it. And it's going to be a very fast handling, very easy to carry tactical carbine in that scenario. If you decide to put optics on your Mini, you're kind of negating one of the advantages of the gun, and that is the lightweight of the gun. But for all intents and purposes, it is a sub 7-pound gun. In a lot of respects, it beats most AR-15s in that respect. However, it does not beat a kel-tec SU-16, which is around sub 5 pounds. And it has a thicker barrel still, the SU-16 series. Look for my review on that. Yeah, it's coming. That's another high-value tactical carbine alternative. Okay, so weight is, I'm going to classify it as excellent, since it is under 7 pounds with a synthetic stock. And let's look in the specifications if the wood is any more. Hopefully I'm holding this still enough for you guys. I sure am trying. 7 pounds, let's see, for the hardwood stock version of the 223. And the synthetic, yeah, it's going to be lighter, 6 3/4 pounds. Just what I told you, 6 pounds, 12 ounces. Okay, enough of that. Firepower of the Mini-14, how does that work? A lot to be said here. The Mini-14 comes with a very cheesy and pretty much useless 5-round magazine. I shouldn't say cheesy, it's very high quality, it works fine for its purposes. And in fact, if you get the 6.8 SPC, the version here, that's a good deer gun. And this would be the magazine you'd be using for that deer gun. Really, I really liked a 6.8 SPC chambering, actually, I'm a big fan. However, we're not talking about deer guns right here, we're talking about defensive firearms. And a 5-round magazine is pretty inadequate. Now that being said, there's a lot of alternatives out there for you to get better magazines for the Mini-14 and better and higher capacity. I'm going to first start with the factory minis. Good luck finding these. Actually, the 20 rounders you can find as of late 2008. Here's a factory 20 round magazine. I'll bring it out here. And I think Ruger at this time has like a special deal. You buy a mini, then you can get one for like 30 bucks, which is like a big discount from what it normally is. And let me pop this out. Okay, I think that this magazine is one of the best overall magazines for the Mini-14. The 20 round factory magazine. It's a factory Ruger, therefore it's absolutely superb in its fit and finish. You'll have no issues with jamming. It'll have great longevity. Awesome. Also comes in a 30 round version. There's your 30 round, and yeah, that is a factory 30 round Ruger magazine. Good luck trying to find those now. Hard to find. These are made of steel versus aluminum like the AR-15 magazine. A lot of people would look at that as an advantage. Steel is tougher than aluminum, and I would agree. However, back to the weight issue, remember I said the weight of the Mini-14 is a little bit misleading, i.e. it looks light. Well, another reason is because you're going to be generally using steel magazines. It's going to add more weight to it. Whereas an AR-15 or an AR-15 compatible tactical carbine is going to use aluminum, maybe even polymer magazines. And yes, there are polymer, I'll talk about here in a sec, for the Mini. That adds more weight to the Mini-14 weapon system. So just be advised, I like to keep it real and give you guys a straight skinny on that. If you're loading up a bunch of steel, let's say you're carrying 6 steel Mini-14 magazines, 30 round variety, that's a problem. That's a lot of weight in my opinion. I don't like to carry more steel than I have to. Okay, so anyways, back to firepower. Yeah, 30 rounders are available. You're not going to find these Ruger 30 rounders, generally speaking. You might be able to get some of these Ruger 20 rounds, at least now if you hurry. But don't give up the boat yet. There's other options. One is PMI. I think they're, and I'm sorry if I get the brands wrong, it might be made by ProMag now. But here's an original PMI nickel-plated 20 round mag. And it's not as trim as the Ruger 20 rounder. It's a little bit thicker. However, it's just as good. I have a lot of experience with these PMI, formerly Federal Ordnance. And I think, I'm not sure who's making them. It might be ProMag. I may annotate it. These are excellent magazines. They're every bit as reliable as a factory in my experience. The springs are good. The followers are good. Excellent. Be very careful at gun shows. Don't get stuff like this. This is a no-name 40 rounder for the Mini-14. And I have some experience with this, and it's garbage. Not reliable. Heavy, bigger, bulkier. If you don't know the brand name of a Mini-14 magazine, stay away from it. And if you don't know specifically if that brand is good and reliable, either by your direct contacts, maybe some reputable forum members somewhere, stay away from it. Here's a PMI magazine, 10 round variety. So that would be, this is a good range magazine. But for carrying the Mini-14 around, generally speaking, the 20 round is your best option. It's the shortest, most portable, on and on. Finally, you might find some of these out there. These are thermold 30 round magazines. Don't believe all the crap you've heard about thermold. There's a lot of forum stuff said about how awful, they call them thermelts, and they're just garbage. I don't find that to be true in my experience. I find thermolds, at least for the Mini-14s, to be very reliable. With one caveat. They work only in the blued guns. I don't know why. In other words, the follower, not the follower, but the feed lips are too high for stainless steel versions. At least they were in years past. and you could get them to fit by sanding your feed lips to fit a stainless Mini-14. There was something they changed dimensionally about the Mini-14, and I haven't tried these in a newer one. I can't really try it in this. This is a 6.8. They'll fit and click in, but they're not going to show me you know what I'm talking about. It's just two different calibers. There's a 223 mag 6.8 right here. But the thermolds for a blued gun work outstandingly. And if you do sand the feed lips, of course you're sacrificing a little bit of strength in your feed lips. So that's a decision you have to make. However, the thermold, unlike these steel magazine alternatives, are lighter. And they're pretty darn tough. I've shot these thermolds with a Mini-14 in sub-zero conditions, summer heat, and I've never had a failure with the ones I've had. Now, does that mean that all thermolds are just outstanding and they'll be great with your Mini? I can't say that because there's different batches, but the ones that I'm showing you right here have been excellent. Okay, so firepower for the Mini-14 is going to be equivalent to that of an AR-15 with some caveats. You're going to be either using a steel magazine, maybe a thermold if you can find them, and by the way, they're going to be more expensive. These magazines are not as cheap as AR-15 magazines because there's not millions upon millions of them made. And you're going to pay more per magazine, generally speaking. All right, that's part one. Out of time, I'll pick it up part two. There's another thing I'm going to show you about the firepower, maybe where to get it. And I'm sorry if I'm shaking the camera. I'm trying to hold it really steady. Here comes part two, Nutnfancy on the Mini-14.